Hey guys, welcome back to Sideline Success Academy. Today we're going to be talking about building athletes, focus on an off-season programming. In this episode, we're going to be covering what I believe is the foundation of athleticism, which is the squat. And inside this episode, we're also going to be talking about alternatives for squat, how to keep your athletes strong, healthy, and promote that strength and explosiveness that we want them to have in order to perform. So to make sure that we're understanding what a squat is, generally when we refer to a squat, we're going to be talking about a backloaded squat. So in the backloaded squat, the barbell is going to be on my back. I'm going to be lowering the bar down to what I believe would be parallel, which for each person, that's going to be a little bit different, but something that we kind of use as a coaching cue is to when the back part of the hamstring covers up the back part of the knee and the back part of that knee kind of disappears. So depth for each individual program might be a little bit different, just kind of like a squat form is going to be a little bit different. But what we do inside of our weight room is making sure that we achieve parallel, which is when the hip is in line with the knee or close enough to it, and the back part of that knee disappears from the hamstring. And generally that'll depend on how much muscle muscle or fat the athlete has on their leg to whether or not it actually covers it up. But kind of using that to your own discretion. We don't go all the way past parallel, and we don't do a above parallel squat. That's kind of just something that we focus on, and we went with program wide. Now, are there benefits to doing either one of those? Sure, there are, but in my opinion, as long as an athlete is squatting and trying to get better at squatting and staying healthy in the process, they're going to see benefits from doing those exercises over time. And so in a barbell loaded back squat, we're going to put the barbell on our back, and we're going to be squatting, making sure that our eyes are forward, chest is up, and we're not arching. So by doing this, what we get in return is a lot of leg development. And squats, to me, are the most beneficial exercise that you can do within any program for any athlete, because it's going to give you an overall better body composition in compared to any other exercise. And it kind of translates over to speed, because the more force that I can exert into the ground, generally that's going to pay dividends into my speed training later on. Now, the issue with back squat is that it's a very difficult exercise to learn correctly over time. Even with coaching, a lot of times people just have, or athletes is what I should say, athletes have a hard time learning to squat appropriately. And a lot of that just comes from having the barbell on the back and then learning how to engage my core so that I don't slouch down or I do any of these things while trying to raise the weight. And we don't want to increase the injury risk by pushing too much heavy weight too early on. So in this video, we're going to be talking about auxiliary types of squats, things that we can do to help develop that strength without sacrificing our legs in the process. So we don't want to injure athletes. So make sure that if you are watching this and that is a concern for you, make sure you stick around to the end of the video to kind of figure out those auxiliaries and how we can use them for younger athletes to make sure that we stay healthy. But the back squat is the foundation of the weight room. To me, it's the most important thing because it applies to any sport. It's going to generate that overall leg development and kind of incorporate a lot of fundamental movement patterns that you see in any sport that you could possibly play, because most sports require you to run, jump, those types of things. And all of those movements are the same type of movement that you do when you're doing the knee flexion and extension that you perform inside of a squat. And it's going to be a great resource or tool to help athletes get better at those movements. So as they get better at performing the squat, generally the carryover to that specific movement inside their sport is higher. And the squat is just a great tool, a resource to kind of start with your programming inside your weight room. Now, we are going to talk about different variations of squats and how we can use those. The first kind of common alternative that we have for back squat is going to be a front loaded squat. And then there's two main types that I'm going to talk about here. One is generally just going to be the shelf. So I'm going to put it on my collarbone right here, and you can kind of do the claw grip where if you want to practice your clean type positions where you're going to be holding it with your arm, or you can kind of exit here, your elbows are high, but we're going to be placing it on our shelf, and we're going to be performing the same type of movement pattern that we would have in a back squat in a front squat. Now this kind of focuses more on the front part of the leg, so the quads, right? It's going to focus more on them than what you would get in a back squat with the glute and the hamstring engagement, just because of the barbell placement. But it still forces the core to stay engaged to make sure that you don't fall forward, which is super beneficial for athletes over time, just trying to teach them how to keep their core engaged even in a back squat position. The other alternative that we kind of have for a front loaded squat is a Zercher squat, and this one's less common but still very useful and kind of a variation off of the front squat. But rather than placing the barbell on what I call the shelf, or where the collarbone kind of meets here, you're actually going to place it on the inside crease of your bicep and your forearm. And so you place the barbell there, holding it in both, and you perform the same squat pattern. The benefit over the front squats is you get a higher muscle engagement with less weight than you could do on a back squat. So what I mean by that is that if I was to take 50% of my max on back squat and do a front squat with it, it would be much more difficult than the 50% on a regular back squat, even though technically it is the same weight. Now, the benefit of having front loaded squats is that you have a lot less lower back stress than what you get from a back squat position. And it also increases a lot of that flexibility and mobility that you need for athletic performance. And it's going to kind of reduce the amount of CNS fatigue that you would also get by constantly having to load up the weight for a back squat workout. And those are things that you want to factor in as you kind of start developing for overall athletic performance. Hey coach, real quick, if you're getting value from this episode, I've got a small favor to ask. Take a second and share this video with another coach who could use a little extra encouragement today. Whether it's a teammate, someone in your district, or even a coach you look up to, pass it along. The mission here is to help build coaches up just like you, and starts by spreading the word. So hit that share button, send it to a friend, and let's keep making an impact together. Thanks for being part of the team. So now let's kind of talk about some auxiliaries and things that we can do for younger athletes in order to focus on leg training without having to jump right into back squat. So on the auxiliary side of things, these are things that we want to use in replacement of back squatting if we've already done it earlier that week, or we want to work a leg movement but we don't want to back squat. So as you kind of think about your workout programming, for example, if we were going to go 3 workouts in a week, okay, 3 full body workouts, we might only back squat one of those workouts. The other 2 workouts would need some type of auxiliary. Well, we just talked about front squat. So let's say Monday we're going to back squat and Friday we're going to front squat. What type of leg movement would we do Wednesday in order to kind of increase athletic performance? So that's the part that would be kind of filled in with these auxiliaries. And these auxiliaries are great tools and resources to kind of teach younger athletes who may not know how to squat correctly the movement without stressing their back yet. Okay, so I still think that we're still building up to the back squat. This is not totally replacing the back squat. This is tools and resources that are either A, building up to the back squat, or B, building to improve the back squat. We're not replacing the back squat. We are simply using these to either help us get there or help us improve it. And these resources are going to vary across different types of movement patterns, but they are all very similar to what you already perform inside a back squat. So let's kind of dive into some different movements that you could use for these things. The first movement that we're going to talk about is a unilateral movement, which means we're going to use one leg at a time, and that's going to be a split squat. A split squat essentially looks like a lunge, but it's not going to be a walking lunge. So imagine your feet are staggered, okay, in a lunge type position, and you're simply lowering your hips to the ground and raising them back up. That's technically a split squat. Now, you could do a rear foot elevated split squat, which we call RFESS, but your back leg is now propped up. It can be propped up on a bench or some type of tool that you can use, but your back leg's propped up and your front leg is still down on the ground, and now you're squatting. You can perform this with a barbell, you can perform it with dumbbells, you can perform it with kettlebell, you can perform it with just body weight, but it's a movement that we're using to kind of train the individual leg to get stronger. And the good thing about the unilateral movements is that it kind of increases your stability with your ankles and making sure that you're staying in line and able to function on one leg versus two leg, and it learns to kind of eliminate any type of overcompensation by one leg for the other, and kind of isolates one leg to kind of get good at that movement pattern, which is, again, if you think about sprinting, we're not sprinting with both legs on the ground, so it's each leg driving each time, and that way the split leg movement trains each leg to get good at driving more force into the ground. And over time, that can kind of help develop into a better sprint for the athlete. The second auxiliary that we're going to be talking about is a landmine squat. So a landmine is a tool where it kind of holds one end of the barbell and it allows us to work with the other end of the barbell. This is something that can be very useful for younger athletes learning the squatting movement, because now it's on a fixed range of motion and there's been very limited ways to kind of fail, and you don't have to rely so much on holding the barbell up with your core. And it's a great tool to kind of teach explosion too, because now we can drive that barbell up, and we even go to like a squat and press position, but it's a violent push from the floor. But younger athletes, it's just practicing the squat. So you'll have one end of the barbell in your hand, you're going to hold it down right here, and you're simply just going to squat. Now you have to be kind of at an angle, otherwise it feels a little funky, so sometimes it takes a while for the kids to get used to it. But it's a great tool to where we can kind of mimic what we'll call a goblet squat here in just a second, with a very limited range of motion, and it allows the athletes to get to depth. So if they have issues getting to depth, and you know your athletes are having issues getting to depth, a landmine squat is a great alternative to kind of incorporate some of that mobility and the various restrictions they have with the back squat. And now on a separate day, you can focus on a landmine squat where we're simply focusing on getting depth, getting down there, and then exploding violently up. So even for high school athletes, this is a great movement that you can kind of incorporate on your auxiliary squat days to help build a stronger squat for your program. So jumping from landmine squat to the goblet squat, a goblet squat is a very similar front-loaded movement pattern to where we're going to hold the dumbbell here, and it's going to be like a vertical. A larger dumbbell will be, a smaller one could be kind of held horizontal, but I'm going to hold it here, and I'm simply just mimicking a front squat while holding the dumbbell. You can do this with a plate, dumbbell, it really doesn't matter, but we want to focus on getting it here and just squatting to depth and violently going up. Again, focusing heavily on making sure that we're sinking all the way down, working on a lot of those hip restrictions. Most of the time that our athletes that might have a strong squat, they still have a lot of hip restriction. So we want to kind of eliminate that and focus on mobility on these lighter days, just trying to going down, then violently pushing up, holding the dumbbell. Again, this one won't push up like the landmine squat to press. We'll just hold it right here, and we're just squatting down and going up. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about today, and simply the easiest one to do, is a bodyweight squat. Generally, we're not going to do this for our high school level athletes that already have a good squat. We'll do it with the squat jumps. So just trying to train the explosion. And this may not be a main exercise. It might be part of a superset, which means we might be doing another lower body movement and then coming over here and finishing with some squat jumps. So like, for example, let's say a station was working rear foot elevated split squat. So they're doing, one partner's doing rear foot elevated split squat, and then partner two is going to be doing the squat jumps, and then they'll flip. That just kind of gives you an idea of what I mean by that. But bodyweight squats are a great tool for athletes that have not executed good form squat yet. So just learning how to squat with no bar, no weight, nothing, learning how to squat, getting down there, then pushing up. This is crucial for young athletes just who haven't practiced the pattern enough yet. And it gets you a lot of reps. So if I'm a young athlete who really struggles with just getting down, like maybe I have some limiting hip mobility or something like that, but just practicing it over time, eventually you're going to get more comfortable with the movement, and eventually those younger athletes will be able to put weight on the bar and be able to do it correctly. But just a body weight squat in general can kind of refine some of those skills that I lack before I put weight on my body. And as a coach, you kind of have to take a step back, because yes, we want to get the athletes that know how to squat. We want to start getting them to the weight, right? Because we know that's how they get stronger. But a lot of times we're too eager to kind of push them there, and we need to take a step back and get them good at the simplest thing first, right? So we can still do all these auxiliaries that I talked about, but sometimes it's good to just get those young kids just to do a body weight squat and teach them how to do it with good form, so that when we go into the weight room and we start learning how to back squat, they already have a semi-decent movement pattern down that they can kind of use to begin back squatting with. And as you begin to develop your program from all the way 7th through 12th, you'll be able to take some of these tools and refine them to fit your needs for your program, and hopefully develop a more successful program in the future. Coach, if you're looking to take your defense to the next level, I've got something special for you. I've just released my Dynamic 3-4 defensive playbook. This is a PDF full of blitz packages, coverage adjustments, run fits, and coaching tips that you can install immediately, whether you're facing spread teams or power-heavy offenses. This playbook gives you the flexibility and aggressiveness you need to succeed. So if you're serious about shutting teams down and confusing quarterbacks, head over to SidelineSuccessAcademy.com and grab your copy of the Dynamic 3-4 playbook. Now let's get back to our original episode. That's going to wrap up today's video. This is going to be the foundation for athleticism, talking about off-season programming. I hope that you were able to take at least one piece of advice from this video, something that you can take away and add to your program, and hopes add value to your program. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Faith, Family, and Football. If you got value from this episode, make sure to subscribe so that you never miss a new drop. And don't forget, head over to SidelineSuccessAcademy.com to grab your free ebook, The 10 Things to Know Before You Start Coaching. And this applies to all coaches. Plus, for all my football coaches out there, you can grab my full 3-4 defensive playbook. And right now, you can save $10 with the code PODDISCOUNT10 at checkout. Again, that's PODDISCOUNT10. Thanks for hanging out with me. Stay strong in your faith, lead your family, and coach with confidence. Catch you next time.